Assassin's Creed Shadows is the 14th major installment in the franchise and arguably one of the most important ones in Ubisoft's history. This is a game that has been delayed not once but twice, and it's rarely ever seen from an Assassin's Creed title because usually those dates are pretty set in stone when they're announced. After the middling reception to Star Wars Outlaws, Ubisoft had to take a step back and look at what they needed to do to make Assassin's Creed Shadows the best game possible. I would also like to thank Ubisoft for providing me with a code for review. I'd already had the game pre-ordered, but they reached out offering to give me a copy a few days early, and having been just laid off my job a couple months ago, if I could save a few dollars here and there, that's something I'm going to take advantage of. But that doesn't change my opinion on how I feel about the game, just because I received it for free. Just wanted to be as transparent as possible with y'all. I'll come out and say this right now, if you're a fan of the more recent RPG entries in this series, this one is probably going to be right up your alley. But if you're a more old school Assassin's Creed player or prefer those games more, this might not scratch that itch for you. But I mean, come on, man. We finally get to have an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan, samurais, assassins, and just a lot of dope stuff for us to do, with a lot of the discussion surrounding the game has actually been about some stupid culture war bullshit. And I'll just say right here, I won't be having any of that here. Take it to Reddit, whine about it somewhere else, because I don't really care who I play as or what's in the game. All that matters is, are the choices good? Do they matter? Is the game fun? And after 80 hours with the game, I've had a shit ton of fun with Assassin's Creed Shadows. The writing isn't anything special, but there are a couple of twists that did end up surprising me throughout the game, and the overall setup and the start of the game can be a little messy at first, but once it got going and got that footing, I loved it. But this is a game that I constantly found myself going to bed thinking about, waking up, and then wanting to play more and more of it, whether I was sneaking around the rooftops as Naoe or charging right at my enemies as Yasuke, in what I think is one of the stronger entries that this franchise has seen.
We have all seen darkness. Some have been that darkness. Because you believe in my cause, we have come together, despite it all, to bring change, to bring light.
I played through Assassin's Creed Shadows on PC on an RTX 4080, an i7-13700K at 1440p, ray tracing on, and a mix of ultra and high settings with frame generation on and DLSS set to quality. For the most part, the game ran pretty well, usually around the 80 to 100 FPS range and sometimes even higher. The biggest issue that I ran into while playing this game was a pretty serious bug that would reboot my entire PC when I was launching the game up, and after some troubleshooting, digging on Reddit, I was actually able to find out this was an issue with frame gen being enabled and then also having a monitor with G-Sync on. Turning off G-Sync did fix the issue, and then I also had to cap the monitor at 144 FPS to avoid any screen tearing. So if you do see a little bit of screen tearing or the footage does look a little bit weird, that is why, so I do apologize. But besides all of that bullshit, the game ran pretty well for me. From a graphical and technical side of things, I thought Shadows looked a lot better than the past entries in the series, especially Valhalla after I went back to look at some of the footage. Yeah, the location of Japan no doubt helps with the comparison, especially when you go and you look at England, it's muted countryside, not really any bright colors. And then you have those beautiful bright colors, all the leaves blowing in shadows. It's not even a competition at that point. Couple that with the changing seasons, the game really just does visually look gorgeous at times when you're out in the map exploring. And the map this go around isn't as massive and bloated like Valhalla's was. It's still large, but I would say around the 40-hour mark, I was looking at it and I was like, have I even made a dent in this thing? Because there's just so much to do and pretty much how densely packed it is. And I mean, there is plenty for you to do. And I never got tired of doing it, but it never got to the point of being tiresome like Valhalla would. The cutscenes this go around are going to be locked at 30 FPS no matter what system you play on, console, PC, doesn't matter. At times the cutscenes can look a little rough and the facial work can look a little rough themselves, but then there's actually some really good cutscenes that wash away all that bad taste in my mouth. So yeah, from a technical side of things, Assassin's Creed Shadows looks like it's in a pretty good shape, minus the whole PC restarting thing, but I'm not sure if that's an issue with this game entirely. I have heard that was an issue also with Cyberpunk with one of their more recent updates, so I think Ubisoft should just take a note from this release, because when the developers are given time to polish and refine the game, it ends up being a net positive for them and the players alike. The story of Assassin's Creed Shadows is one that does take a bit of time to get going over the course of its 80-hour runtime. Now, pump the brakes real quick here and say that a good portion of that time in my playthrough was doing a lot of the side content. And I mean Quite literally almost all of the side content. I'm working on 100% right now for the game. I've heard that you can beeline the main story in about 40 hours, but personally, this isn't a game that I think you should beeline. Yasuke and Naoe's paths are pretty split in that first act, with you only playing as the former for about 30 minutes, then you're left to actually play as Naoe till the end of Act 1. I've heard of people playing upwards of 20 to 25 hours till they actually finally unlocked Yasuke, and personally, this is the only time that I would actually recommend rushing is basically just rushing till you unlock him so that you have both those characters unlocked. Reason I say this is because there's a lot of exploration and a lot of activities that you'll actually only be able to do with Yasuke, so you'll be kind of limited in your exploration until then. Yasuke's story is also one that I really wasn't sure how they would fit it into the narrative here. He's a slave at the start of the game with the Portuguese as they come over to the land for the first time, and it's after a meeting with Oda Nobunaga, he's taken into his stewardship of the Lord as he sees a bit of a potential into him. That's how he becomes a samurai, and you get more of his sort of backstory alleviated through flashbacks, but it's not something that's overtly just directly told to you outright. Then on the flip side, you have Nawe. Her family has lived here their entire lives, and basically, when her village is invaded, her whole life is turned upside down. If you played the past couple installments in the series, you'll be pretty familiar at least with how this mission structure or setup is going to go. You'll be sent to a region of the map, and then you'll have a couple missions in that area, and then you're going to end up taking out one of your targets. So really, your enjoyment of this game is going to boil down to how much you get down with this gameplay loop or the structure of the main quest. I've heard a lot of people say that they don't like the story or the writing's awful, and I don't get that with my time played. Not every single one of these mission chains or quests is going to be stellar and spot on, but I do think there are ones that did shine a little bit more than others. I do also think there could have been a little bit better voice work for some of those quests as well, but those are really all just small issues in the grand scheme of things when you're going throughout the story. And honestly, when it's all said and done, I like what they did with the main quest. I loved a lot of the stuff they did with Yasuke, especially in the back half, the way that they could have just shied away from it, and I'm glad they didn't because it's really important to his character and to see that development as you progress throughout the game. Naoe's journey was my favorite early on with her story. That was something I didn't expect to go the way that it did, but I also would have liked a little bit more closure or answers to her side of the story without giving away too many spoilers. I also do want to mention there's maybe like a total of 4 to 5 hours worth of Assassins and Templar content in this game, so that might disappoint some of you, but the way that it's done, I actually thought was pretty well within the context of the story and the scenario that it was in. I felt like it was a scenario where it was a little bit more of quality over quantity. Instead of dragging it out any longer than it needed to be, it was concise within those 4 to 5 hours, and I thought it worked pretty well. I do think that the ending was a little abrupt itself, like the actual ending of the game. There is an epilogue that you can play through that does give the game a little bit more of a definitive ending with all your allies back at the main camp. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the side content and the open world exploration here. Take it from someone who has over 160 hours in Assassin's Creed Valhalla when I say that the side content and the open world here in Shadows is miles better than what we got in England. Gone are these silly little random quest chains where you help someone move some rocks around, but rather each area that you go to here in Japan is going to have what I call circle quests to do. These usually range from taking out enemies in an area, little stories that see you helping out a farmer, or clearing out a corrupt group of Ronin that then becomes its own entire ring of people for you to take down. Each new area of the map that you go to, you will actively be seeking out and looking for these when you go out into that open world because maybe the house that you just passed by earlier has an important target in it that you need to take out. That will happen for you time to time where you're stealthing through an area and then you randomly take out a person and then you see that they're part of some larger tree. So if you enjoy that in this game, I'll be happy to inform you that there is plenty of that in this game. The actual open world itself isn't nearly as big as Valhalla and certainly not as big as Odyssey. I'd say it's right around the size of Origins, which I think is a good middle point, and it gives you enough room to explore, spread things out, but it doesn't make it seem too spread out and drawn out. When exploring the open world, I would also heavily recommend using your mount instead of trying to take shortcuts through the mountain on foot because the terrain's pretty rough, and more often than not, you're going to end up sliding back down. The game also has a really clutch guide system that sort of puts a path on the ground in front of you and then takes you to your objective or any map markers that you've placed as well. I know I briefly kind of touched on it, but I'm going to go in a little bit more in depth here. There's plenty of side content that range from optional boss fights that see you tracking down old samurais and then you duel them one-on-one each time, or you can chase down some rumors of some old yokai folklore. You really don't know what some of these side quests are going to be half the time. There are a couple repeatable ones that will pop up, like go to this province and defeat 100 enemies, but the actual act of going out into the open world, mixed with all the different types of combat options, was something that I found addicting to do. You also have contracts that are repeatable bounties that net you crafting materials for your gear or either to upgrade your hideout. Constantly, I'd be telling myself at 12 a.m. that I'd just grab just one more viewpoint, and that was the third time I'd already told myself this. There's plenty of forts for you to clear out in the open world, but these can get a little bit of annoying to track down that last samurai daisho in order to open the chest. Usually it's going to require you to kill 2, 3, 4, or 5 of them, and usually they're spread out across the map, so it can, like I said, just get annoying having to track all those down. Each character is also going to have a set of activities and events that only they are going to be able to participate in. So, for instance, across the map, you'll find these parkour trails that only Nawe can access because you need her grappling hook. Or in Yasuke's instance, you have tombs that only he can clear because there's heavy objects that need to be moved. So as you come across these, go ahead and take a look at what the reward is, and that usually is a good telltale sign on who you need to play it as. Lots of the time for myself, I would essentially play as one character for a couple hours, do things out in the open world that they could access, and then after some time, when I got bored, I would just essentially switch to the other character and rinse and repeat. I also think that's why my playthrough time was much longer, was because I really wasn't in any rush to finish that main story, and just I wanted to see what the game had to offer in terms of side content. And I personally think that was a good choice for me, but I know that's not going to be for everyone, and I know that's not how everyone's going to play the game. But I think that if you do want to experience the open world, there's a bit of side content that is there for you. Another aspect of this game that is going to either be your jam or it's not going to be your jam is the hideout system, which is going to act as your pseudo base of operations for Nawe and Yasuke's journey. This is a place where our characters can take a break, rest up in between missions, but it's also a place where you can improve your gear and your overall level. This hideout is something that is going to be fully customizable, and early on you'll start with basically just your starter building and then a few other options, but what you do after that is entirely up to you. You're given a whole map tile to essentially build out and kind of just create what you want. It might seem pretty small at first, but when you're actually walking around it instead of the builder mode, you can see that you've got a lot of real estate to work with here. I don't think that my base is really anything special, and I'm sure that people are going to build some absolutely batshit insane crazy bases. I liked it. It was something that you could sink some time into, and then also upgrading those different buildings. They offered up different perks for, your character. Maybe you need a little bit more healing. Maybe you need a bit more allies. They offered up different abilities, which I thought was a nice way to tie those into the game as well. Personally, like I said, I love base building. I love base building mechanics. It's why I have over 10 days played in Fallout 4. So I maybe do go a little bit overboard with them and spend a little bit more time than your average player would. But like I said, I like that they at least tried to tie some benefits to combat in the game to the different buildings and the upgrades themselves. If I could recommend anything, if you're not really someone that wants to invest in that and do too much with it, I would still just recommend putting the tea room down because it gives you an extra 10% on all XP that is gained, which is always a plus when you're playing. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me most about this game was actually the progression system and that it wasn't actually entirely level based. So that tip that I just gave you about, putting the tea house down and getting more XP might seem contradictory to this next statement or this next section, but just hear me out. So the thing that's going to matter the most is your knowledge point level. It's actually going to be the biggest factor when you're looking at your skill tree. So more often than not, you're going to be loaded. And I mean loaded at times with different skill points because you've bought everything in that tier. But because your knowledge rank isn't high enough, you have to go around, grab 10 to 15 tokens to then level up to that next rank. This is where we're sort of at a crossroad. So if you like the prospect of roaming the open world, doing objectives, this is probably going to seem like a non-issue to you. But if you prefer a more streamlined experience, you might feel forced to do activities that you might not do or might not otherwise like to do. I think a lot of the enjoyment of Assassin's Creed Shadows is going to come down to your willingness to accept the type of game that you're playing and if you enjoy how they're doing it here. And once you level up enough, you'll have, like I said, an assortment of skills that you can choose from both Nawe and Yasuke. These abilities will also correspond to essentially whatever weapon that you have in hand, and then each character is going to have a different set of tools at their disposal as well. Nawe is going to have a much smaller arsenal of weapons, being limited to just a katana, a small little Tano weapon, and then a scythe and chain weapon, which is personally my favorite. Then you have your normal set of assassin tools like kunai, smoke bombs, distraction devices, so on and so forth. Yasuke, on the other hand, has a wide range of weapons that he can choose from. A teppo, which is basically a musket. You've got your long katana, a big club to whack people around with, a giant pole with a blade on the end, and then you've got your trusty bow and arrow with different types of ammunition. So just from the weapon assortments alone, you would assume or make the sense that Yasuke is going to be built for that front direct combat, and you'd be damn right he is. He is so much fun to just run in there and crack some heads open. I mean, most of his abilities are focused on just cutting enemies down, where Nawe's are going to be more varied and usually pertaining to her stealth or assassination damage. While you can try to do stealth as Yasuke, he's going to climb much slower, he's going to crouch walk much slower, so it's really just going to be in your best interest to just wreck shit with him. Nawe can be a brute fighter, but she doesn't have that much health and is honestly best suited for those one-on-one combat scenarios, but her stealth capabilities top everything else. Personally, I just had a ton of fun playing as both these characters this go around, whereas the past two games we've had to choose between two characters. I like that this time we were actually given two characters to play that each had their own gear, skill, and playstyle to match whatever mood you're feeling. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a game that needed to be a hit when Ubisoft needed it most, and personally, I think they've delivered here with this release. They did something that they rarely ever do, and that's delay a game in order to polish it and make it as good as possible when they're releasing it. They even took it a step further, delaying it a second time for further polish, this time only by a month, but that showed that Ubisoft wasn't just treating this like any other release on their calendar, but instead a premiere release that could turn some heads. And after just 1 week, they've announced that over 3 million players have jumped into Assassin's Creed Shadows, making it one of the most played modern day AC games in history. And if that doesn't spell success, then I don't know what does. I think that my time with the game is mostly over until that first story content drops, which they said will include a new area and over 10 hours of content. And after what I just played, I would gladly play more. So hopefully the DLC is more of that. We have a solid narrative that lets you play as your typical assassin character in Nawe, but then you also have your samurai fantasy with Yasuke and his personal journey that he got to go through as well. The mileage on this one might really vary if you're tired of past Assassin's Creed releases, and I wouldn't blame you for skipping out on this one if your last experience was Valhalla, because that one was definitely a slog to get through, but please do yourself a favor, give this one a shot. Sign up for a month of Ubisoft Plus for $18, give it a go, and if you don't like it, you're only out, I guess, $18 at that point. The open world's gorgeous, the amount of content that you have to do in this game is bound to keep you busy for a couple weeks, maybe even more if you're planning on going for that 100%. Like I said, kind of working my way through it. I think there might be a bugged achievement at the moment, but there's a couple more that I'm trying to do, just miscellaneous things out in the open world. The combat is refreshing and fun with the different weapons and abilities that you have at your disposal, and then some of the best stealth that we've seen in recent years from the series. I think Assassin's Creed Shadows is worth your time if you're new and or returning player, and certainly worth playing. And once again, I'd like to thank Ubisoft for providing me with a code for review. So if you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like on it, subscribe. I'll have a couple more reviews coming up here in the next couple months as well. And as always, if you did make it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day. And this has been my review for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Thank you for watching.
Do you sub? We are the shadows.
That served the light.